gang violence and other kind of violence.
Get away! I could be at work, at school, in my car, I can still get shot by the police, but I can get shot anywhere.
So it is what it is.
What's good, Shadow Realm? It's a Black Gen Z Mindset. Make sure you go ahead and like, comment, share, subscribe, and let's get into the video.
Shocking new details about why a woman may have allegedly killed her partner and baby. According to a new report from the LA Times, Danielle Johnson was an influencer with 100,000 followers on X, formerly Twitter, who mostly talked about astrology online. The report goes on to say she made posts saying she was worried about the eclipse and called it, quote, the epitome of spiritual warfare.
Wow. So we have a lot of eclipse hysteria going on in the States, and predominantly we see the people who are lashing out over this eclipse are Black women. I did a story the other day on a crazy Black woman, Talon Celestine, who went on a shooting spree on the Florida I-10 over the eclipse, saying that God had directed her to do so. And now we have this woman who is claiming that the end of the world is happening because the eclipse, even though we are 2 days past the eclipse. This is what the climate change hysteria does. This is what all of this environmental, the world is about to end, doom and gloom rhetoric from the mainstream media does. It radicalizes people. It turns them to absolute nuts. And here we are talking about an individual who literally deleted her whole family and herself. These super sister gremlins are on demon time.
In the hours before the eclipse, police say she stabbed her partner to death in their Woodland Hills apartment.
Damn.
Then pushed her 2 daughters out of her car on the 405 freeway. The 9-year-old child survived. Minutes later, Johnson died when she slammed her car into a tree in Redondo Beach.
We're learning new details about a murder-suicide that left 3 people dead, including an 8-month-old baby. The family tragedy unfolding on Monday on 3 separate locations. Now we're...
An 8-month-old baby. This is how evil, this is what evil looks like. This is the face of evil. I mean, we are witnessing some very trying times nowadays, and it's absolutely getting scary, and it makes you feel like there's not much that we can do about it.
We're seeing how the events unfolded hour by hour. It all started in Woodland Hills at 3:40 in the morning. The LAPD says the suspect, Danielle Johnson, got into an argument with her partner, Jalen Cheney, stabbing him to death. The mother then fled the scene with her 2 children. 50 minutes later, 4:30 a.m., Johnson was driving on the 405 freeway in Westchester when police say the girls were thrown out of the vehicle. The baby was hit by a car and killed. Half an hour later, at 5 in the morning, Johnson was speeding in the city of Redondo Beach. She crashed into a tree and died. Our Leanne Suter has been closely following this story. Leanne, the sole survivor of this tragedy was the older sister.
Absolutely, Mark. Heartbreaking details coming out about this horrific tragedy. That sole survivor, just 9 years old, apparently witnessing almost all of the deadly violence.
Wow, and think about the trauma that 9-year-old has to deal with for the rest of their lives, and obviously becoming an orphan at the same time, losing your baby, sibling. I mean, it's an absolute tragedy.
A deadly end to a trail of violence as the mother behind the wheel of this crumpled Porsche Cayenne is killed when she slammed into a Redondo Beach tree. 34-year-old Danielle Johnson is also accused of killing her live-in boyfriend at their apartment and her 8-month-old daughter when she threw the infant and her 9-year-old sister out of her car on the freeway.
The suspect slowed the vehicle and opened the passenger door for her daughter and then told her to get out of the car. And when the daughter didn't do that, she then forcibly pushed her out of the vehicle in the middle of the freeway while moving, while the 9-year-old was holding the 8-month-old baby.
The 8-month-old fell to the pavement and was struck and killed by a passing vehicle. The 9-year-old managed to make it to the shoulder with moderate injuries. A horrific ending to deadly violence that began hours earlier for the sole survivor.
And let it be known, these are the women raising the next generation. I mean, it's getting wicked out here. These super sister gremlins are on demon time.
Eyewitness News has learned the 9-year-old witnessed her mother stab her live-in boyfriend, 29-year-old Jalen Cheney, to death in their Woodland Hills apartment.
That little girl obviously saw more than she ever should have seen in any life yesterday. So I just hope someone's taking care of her because she's going to need it.
Investigators say Johnson killed Cheney early Monday morning after a fight that rammed the garage gate as she fled with her daughters.
Their door was wide open. There was blood on the floor leading into their apartment, and then a trail of it in the hallway leading up to the elevator, and I saw some blood on the walls.
A short time later, detectives say Johnson pushed her daughters out of her car on the 405 and drove away. Her final act, taking her own life at more than 100 miles per hour. Detectives now piecing together the trail of violence and searching for a motive.
Given that the only witness we really have to this crime now is a 9-year-old girl, there's just very little information we have other than there was a verbal altercation that turned violent and it ended in tragedy.
The 9-year-old now in the care of the Department of Children's Services. Her father lives out of state. It's unclear if Cheney was the father of the 8-month-old who died.
Tonight, our I-Team has learned exclusive new details. An 8-month-old baby, an infant, and her sister were pushed out of a moving car onto the freeway by their mother. Good evening, everyone. I'm Colleen Williams.
And I'm Annabelle Sedano. Authorities say Danielle Johnson is suspected of murdering her boyfriend in Woodland Hills. She died later that morning after crashing her car in Redondo Beach.
Our investigative reporter, Eric Leonard, has been working this story all day. He joins us with what he discovered. And a warning for you, Eric, these details very, very disturbing.
Very true, Colleen. Detectives say they believe that this 8-month-old baby was in her 9-year-old sister's arms when their mother pushed them out of the passenger door and into traffic on the 405 early yesterday morning. The 9-year-old girl lost her grip, the baby fell into the roadway and was hit by cars. The 9-year-old made it to the shoulder and survived, and police tell me they may never learn the reasons any of this happened.
We really don't know why this incident escalated to such violence.
LAPD detectives say there is no rational explanation for the horrific violence that began with the stabbing murder of 29-year-old Jalen Cheney inside an apartment in Woodland Hills, then the death of the 8-month-old in the lanes of the 405 freeway. Police say there's no doubt the mother of the girls, named Danielle Johnson, was the only person responsible.
Looking at the history between the victim and suspect, they have been dating for a few years, but there's no prior incidents of domestic violence reported between the two, no calls for service at their apartment, and they've been living there for about 1.5 years now.
He says Cheney...
Wow. So, I mean, it wasn't like it was necessarily predictable, but there was a report that came out recently that basically said that people who believed in the astrology stuff and all this mysticism and zodiac signs, they potentially could have lower IQs. Now, obviously, we're not going to make a broad sweeping statement, but it looks like she got in way too deep, and that kind of caused her to become bat-ish crazy. And therefore, she crashed out, literally.
He was stabbed once in the chest above the heart, and the 9-year-old girl was an eyewitness. A short time later, the girl was holding her baby sister in the front passenger seat of Johnson's SUV when Johnson slowed the car while on the 405 in Culver City and pushed the girls out.
During that event, the 9-year-old sustained moderate injuries. She was able to get up from the middle of the freeway and run to the shoulder to avoid traffic. But unfortunately, the 8-month-old baby remained in the middle of the freeway and was struck by moving vehicles.
The CHP and Redondo Beach police say about a half hour later, Johnson's Porsche collided with trees while going 100 to 120 miles per hour. The impact wrecked the car and Johnson was killed instantly. Johnson was the mother of both girls and was in the process of getting a divorce from another man. Neither she nor Cheney appear in recent court records, but neighbors at their apartment complex told NBC4 they often heard arguing and fighting.
It's like literally so tragic. I don't even know. I feel so bad for that little girl and that poor baby.
So even though it appears there is no one to prosecute, the LAPD says it will fully investigate the circumstances just like any other murder case. The 9-year-old girl who survived was interviewed by specialists in child trauma, and detectives tell me they do not plan to question her again. They say she has family here and out of state, but for the moment is in the protective care of the county. Live in the newsroom, I'm investigative reporter Eric Leonard, NBC4 News. Back to you.
What's good, Shadow Realm? It's your boy Jenquavius Jackson, and y'all already know I'm demonetized and shadow banned in this bitch. So if you want to contribute, go to the Cash App, the PayPal, the GoFundMe, or join the Patreon. Also, don't forget to visit the merch store for all your favorite BGZM News 17 gear, including our exclusive Trump is a Blood t-shirt. Go fast before they sell out. They are already flying off the shelves, no cap. And remember, these super gremlins are on demon time.
We are learning more tonight about the mother police say murdered her boyfriend in Woodland Hills before pushing her baby and 9-year-old daughter into traffic on the 405 freeway. Thanks for joining us. I'm Carolyn Johnson.
I'm Kathy Vara. We are learning more about the online personality of Danielle Johnson and how she was known by her more than 100,000 followers. Investigative reporter Eric Leonard joins us now live from our newsroom with details. Eric.
Hi, Kathy and Carolyn. Well, we've confirmed that the mother, whose name was Danielle Johnson, was also known online as Danielle Oyaka. Through her website and social media, she sold astrology sessions and products online.
And that's the even scarier part, that there were most likely women who fell for her scheme, bought her products, booked consultations with her, and she telling them stuff and she don't know what the hell she talking about.
She made several posts before the deaths warning about the solar eclipse. A law enforcement source says they are confident these social media posts show Danielle Johnson, who describes herself as an astrologer and a recording artist. Some of her posts on X, formerly Twitter, made proclamations about things that would happen to people who were born under various astrological signs. One post last week warned people not to look at Monday's solar eclipse, which happened hours after the killings and deaths in this case. Many other posts were anti-Semitic. Others spread false or unproven theories about COVID-19. The LAPD says detectives believe Johnson stabbed to death her 29-year-old live-in boyfriend, Jalen Chaney, inside the apartment the couple shared in Woodland Hills. That happened early Monday morning. Then, police say she pushed her 9-year-old daughter into traffic while driving on the 405 freeway in Culver City before dawn, while that girl was holding Johnson's 8-month-old daughter. The infant was hit by cars and killed. The 9-year-old was able to get over to the shoulder. She survived. Now, less than an hour later, police in Redondo Beach say Johnson was killed when her Porsche SUV struck several trees while traveling at more than 100 miles per hour.
And it looks like she was making decent money on X. Has a pretty big following. One of my accounts was recently suspended from X, so I mean, it's wild. You have people like this who are doing things in real life. Meanwhile, guys like me are getting suspended on what is supposed to be a free speech platform. But it looks like she had a big following, making decent money on X. She had 100K followers. And there are people who have questions and have comments and concerns about her tweets. There is one woman here who says, I feel like she had a mental illness or was schizophrenic, then started to dabble in spiritual things she had no business messing with, and the ish made her crash out completely. Another woman says, I entertained some of her astrology posts in the past, then she went dark. Super weird, like many conspiracy theorists. Please protect your minds, people. You don't need to be going down rabbit holes reading things that will F with your mind. You will eventually lose it. Somebody says, so she deleted her husband and baby because of the eclipse. Somebody says, I hope the 9-year-old is doing okay. No child should experience what those kids went through. She stabbed her partner to death and pushed the 8-month-old. Okay. Somebody says, let's be clear. Every spiritualist, every astrologer is not the same. We are not all on the brink of murder. Okay, so that is the communitas POV of the situation and how they're taking it. So, I mean, it's just extremely interesting what's going on here.
Now, detectives who've worked this case caution that even though they're eager to find some kind of an explanation for all of this violence, there is a chance it will never be understood. They say while Johnson's astrology-related posts and these eclipse references could reveal something about her mindset, without being able to interview her, there's just no way to know. Lastly, the 9-year-old girl who survived this ordeal is with the LA County Department of Children and Family Services. She has relatives here in California and out of state, and child welfare workers are looking to find the proper placement for her. Live in the newsroom, I'm investigative reporter Eric Leonard, NBC4 News. Back to you.
New at 10 tonight, we've learned that the suspect in this week's horrific murder-suicide was an online astrology influencer. Here's a look at her, who posted about the solar eclipse being the apocalypse. Fox 11's Gina Silva, she's live with developing new information on this case tonight. Gina?
And there are a lot of people who indulged her and boosted her head up, and you know, these people need to be held to account too, to a certain extent, at least falling for it. You know, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Marla, this case has been so shocking from beginning to end, and now we're learning about a new disturbing layer to this tragedy.
A lot of our foundations as a society are toxic. They're ungrounded and they're unrealistic.
LAPD confirms Danielle Johnson, a.k.a. Danielle Ayoka, seen here on the Scotty and Sylvia show, was an astrology influencer on social media who was concerned about the eclipse.
Eclipses, there's more births, there's more deaths.
Leading up to the eclipse on Monday, Danielle, who went by the handle Mystic X Lipstick, made several alarming posts like these. Wake up, the apocalypse is here. And the eclipse is the epitome of spiritual warfare. She also reposted alerts that signaled this is the final warning. Something big is coming.
This type of story is probably one of the most tragic and horrifying stories that we'll ever hear about.
Like the rest of us, clinical psychologist Dr. David Swanson, who never treated Danielle, is trying to make sense of this horrific tragedy. Just hours before the eclipse was to take place over California, Danielle stabbed her boyfriend to death in Woodland Hills, pushed her kids out of a moving car on the 405 freeway in the Westchester area, which resulted in the death of her 8-month-old baby and the injury of her 9-year-old daughter. Then Danielle died after crashing her Porsche into a tree in Redondo Beach.
Perhaps she thought that this eclipse meant that it was the end of the world. The apocalypse was here, especially because of some of the statements that she made.
There were plenty of similar posts and videos on social media predicting all kinds of disasters and the end of the world.
And when you're sitting on TikTok or you're on social media, and clearly she was an influencer, so you know she watched a lot of this stuff, it's very easy to get sucked into the fear that these videos start to create.
Could this have been postpartum depression?
I don't think it would have been totally postpartum depression, because we have a lot of women who deal with postpartum depression.
Yeah, and that's the main excuse that a lot of people are giving her online to excuse her behavior. She did have the 9-month-old or the 8-month-old. So, you know, these are the things that you hear thrown out. Oh, it was postpartum, da da da. There's no excuse for what she did. Absolutely none.
And it doesn't result in something like this. But certainly any type of mood disorder makes it much harder to cope with other things as they start to come up.
Looking at this tragedy in hindsight, Dr. Swanson says there were obvious signs. The happy and smiling Danielle had changed and was struggling with something dark.
She was warning people. She was saying, pick a side. The way that she typed about it was in all caps. It looked like she was very disturbed.
If you or someone you know is struggling with a mental health crisis, this is the number to call, 866-903-3787. I'm Gina Silva, Fox 11 News.
We have new details now about the trail of horrifying violence that left 3 members of a local family dead.
Tragically, that includes an 8-month-old infant found dead on the 405 freeway. Police now saying they were pushed out of a moving car. KTLA's Rachel Menitoff joins us live from Woodland Hills with details. Rachel?
Sandy, LAPD confirms this was a murder-suicide. Police say after a verbal altercation, a woman stabbed her partner inside this Woodland Hills apartment complex. The victim's family tells us he was an Air Force mechanic and a loving father to their 2 children. Now, his homicide is connected to 2 other fatalities, all within the same family. A shocking scenario of twists and turns ultimately ends in tremendous tragedy. LAPD confirms 34-year-old Danielle Johnson stabbed and killed 29-year-old Jalen Allen Cheney in their shared Woodland Hills apartment when a heated argument turned violent early Monday morning. She then took off down the 405 with her 2 kids, pushing her 9-year-old daughter and infant from the moving car. The baby was killed and the little girl injured but survived. Johnson continued driving, her car going over 100 miles per hour before she crashed into a tree on PCH in Redondo Beach.
Jeez, I mean, every time I hear it, it makes you wonder. I mean, how throwed off are these modern women? Like, how throwed are they really? I've reported on several sisters who have deleted their children in the recent months, actually. So, I mean, when is enough, right? When is enough to say, hey, man, we got some sisters out here who are bat-ish crazy, and we don't need to be validating them by giving them a whole platform on social media and following them just because they're posting about astrology. It's just wild. And these people try and make it seem like they are all knowing and super wise and they're just like interconnected with the galaxy or energies and whatnot. Once you start hearing people talk like that, all right, I need to be very far away from you.
I looked at my phone and I saw that there was 2 kids found on the side of the 405 freeway and their ages, and I screamed. And I called my husband and my daughter up and I read them the article. And we all knew at that point it was our neighbors. It was obvious.
The couple's next-door neighbors woke up to a trail of blood leading from the apartment to the elevator and immediately called for help.
Their front door was wide open. It was like propped open. And I saw pretty much it was in disarray in there. I mean, the knocked over furniture and blood.
I told them it was a 3-story. The bedrooms were downstairs, and stood there as they said, I see a body down. And they pulled their guns and said, if anyone's in there, come out with your hands up.
Richard and Jody Berglund didn't know the couple personally. According to family, Jalen was in the Air Force, served 4 years in Italy, where he likely met Danielle. He was an aspiring meteorologist. His brother tells KTLA he didn't know the details of the couple's relationship. As for his daughter, she's being treated for her injuries at UCLA. She's the sole survivor and likely the primary witness to a series of unimaginable events.
Knowing that that poor child saw what she had to see and experienced what she had to experience on the side of the freeway, and, you know, losing her mother the way she's now lost her mother, and probably the last memory she have of her mother is not going to be great. And I just can't. That is going to haunt me forever.
CHP tells me it's interviewing all witnesses, including the 9-year-old girl who survived this ordeal as part of its investigation. We're live in Woodland Hills. I'm Rachel Menitoff. I'll send it back inside to both of you.
Gang violence and other kind of violence.
Get away! I could be at work, at school, in my car, and I can still get shot by the police. I can get shot anywhere.
So it is what it is.